Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue. I'm trying not to talk too much because there's a little bit more to go in this one.
Reality alone is. The world is not means names and forms have no reality apart from Brahman. Yeah. But good question. One must learn how to use these examples and understand the examples in their right context.
This is from the last video.
Live audience here? Anybody? Yes, please come here.
Thank you, Swamiji. I have a question in dilemma with my son. We discuss about Vedanta, and he's more a science type of person. And I tell him that examples of Swami Vivekananda seeing Devi, Ramakrishna Paramhansa seeing Devi, and then I try to bring it down to, since it's difficult for him to comprehend, talk about Ramanujam getting all the mathematical equations from Devi. And so I'm unable to convince him. He says, look, science is more honest. What you're explaining, you cannot convince me the way science does.
Right.
So I'm in a dilemma how to explain to him.
It's a very good.
This is the issue that I kind of have with kind of translating this and also accepting certain things. Again, this is the reason why I do follow what Sadhguru says about you must experience it. And things that we experience are subjective. What you experience, someone else may not experience. It's not an objective. So Swami here talks about three realities. I think he calls the first one subjective, then he calls the next one transactional, which I call objective. Then there's the absolute reality. And a subjective and objective. Subjective is what you personally experience, what you experience in your life. Everything that you experience is all subjective. However, whatever you experience and everyone else can experience becomes objective. There's a little bit of finagling there in terms of like, just because you and a group of people experience it but no one else does, then it becomes that gray line between objective and subjective. But generally speaking, objective is something that's scientifically verifiable. So they can do tests, you can use machines on it, and say, yep, this is real. This is a this is a cell phone. Yep, looks like it. That's objective reality. Subjective, and it's whatever you experience, and generally speaking, not everyone else experience.
Good question. You know why science is more convincing? He's absolutely right. And I agree with him. You know why science is more convincing?
It's objective. It's verifiable. Everyone in a sense can verify it.
Because science has truth on its side. Science can be corroborated. You can verify it. It is rational, it's logical, it's verifiable. Right? And its claims are out there. If you have any doubts, go and check it out. Learn the science for yourself. You're welcome to check out the data. You're welcome to do the experiments for yourself. You have to understand it and you can check it out. And what Vivekananda said was, religion is exactly like that. You don't have to believe in it. Here are the methods. They're different methods than science because it's internal, it's not external. But you can have the same experiences that anybody else has had. I'm going to give the answer in two levels. One is the answer which Vivekananda gave in this country in the 19th century and in India also. I'm giving that now. But I'll give you a deeper answer a little later. So religion is realization. Just as science is a matter of experience and verification, religion is also experience and verification. Vivekananda clearly said that. He put it in these terms because it would be acceptable to the people in the 19th, and he knew in the 20th century also, which was coming, people wanted a rational religion, not a religion where you just have to believe. So he said religion is realization. How did Narendranath become Vivekananda? Exactly like your son, he was asking the question, have you seen God? Or is it something you just find in books? Is it something that you just have to believe? No. So Ramakrishna Paramhamsa told him, I have seen God, just as I see you. And that's what caught Narendranath, and he became Vivekananda. The Patanjali Yoga Sutras are an entire manual of experience. You do these techniques and you will get these experiences, which will convince you. Right? Even the traditional dualistic approaches, the bhakti traditions, in India it has always culminated in experience. All the great saints, whether Tulsidas or Mirabai or all the devotional saints, they all had experience of God in their chosen ideal. They actually had visions of God. They saw God in that way. They interacted with God. So it was always experience based. Now you may challenge those experiences, but remember, those experiences are replicated and they can be replicated. They never say, Vivekananda said, if somebody says, I have seen God, but you cannot and you must believe in me, don't believe in such a person. You too can see God and you must see God. You must experience God. God experience, he says, is the purpose of life. It's not a topping you can put on your main order. One extra optional on top. No, it is the main order. God realization is the purpose of life, and it's realization. So that is my first answer.
Real quick with that one, I would say this is definitely something that if I were to translate this into the West, this is something that I could very much say to someone who's religious, bhakti person in a sense, someone who sees faith. However, I think it could be very well be challenged just because, again, we look at Abrahamic religion where there's only one way to believe in that, and to say that you can experience God, it might be blasphemous. To say that you are God, it's blasphemous because there's only one God and that God is not true. But the open-minded people, that can kind of translate very well. But he's talking about how you can experience this exact same experience. I guess the problem that I'd have with that is that how do we know it's the exact same experience? They may say the same thing, but the experience could be a little bit different. There's no, again, this is the reason why science is an objective. If everyone can experience the same thing in this objective reality, but there must be ways to verify that. Oh yeah, this machine is saying you experience 65. Okay, you? 65 too. Okay, and then you? 65. Oh, it's all the same so far. You know, objective realities like that. And again, to say that you all must experience the exact same thing, I think, in my opinion, doesn't have to be the case. As long as you experience something good and you believe in it or whatever, that works for me. You don't have to say, yup, it's 65, 65, 65, therefore it's the same thing. It's like, and this is what makes it subjective, in my opinion.
That there are techniques by which you can get these experiences for yourself and verify them. And it's a worthwhile project to take up. It's really worthwhile. There's nothing more worthwhile in life. But let me go to another answer, which is more subtle. It is this. You know what is the problem in believing in, when religion speaks about, I saw God, even seeing God. What's the problem? The problem is, the existence of God is heavily faith-based. You start off by believing, and you proceed for a long time on belief until you get some experience. It's based on faith. How do I know that God exists? The things that science talks about are evident. They're either they are seen by my eyes, by my own senses, or by instruments which can extend the power of my senses, microscopes, telescopes, particle accelerators, and whatnot. So, all these science deals with a tangible reality. Even the intangible reality which it deals with, the tiny atoms and subatomic particles and all, they are made tangible by instrumentation and by proper scientific procedures. Whereas what religion claims to deal with seems to be entirely faith-based. You just believe in it. It seems to be like that. For such people, and there are many such people, there is another approach. You don't have to start off with God. Start off with yourself. Start off not in search of God, but in search of, who am I? What is this person? Who is this person? Our own existence is never doubted. You can doubt the existence of God. In all the theistic religions, there will be some effort spent in trying to convince people of the existence of God. So in Christianity, for example, you have the theological proofs of the existence of God. Saint Thomas Aquinas, the 5 important proofs of the existence of God. In Nyaya philosophy of Hinduism, which is a dualistic philosophy, you have, I know of number of philosophers who have given multiple proofs. Udayan Acharya gives 9 proofs of the existence of God. Now you see, they're struggling. They're struggling to establish the existence of God. But when you look at yourself, you don't have to give proofs of the existence of yourself. Nobody seriously doubts. But what we doubt is, what is the nature of the self? Is it a limited being? Is it an unlimited being? Is it an appearance? Is it momentary? Different theories of the self. But the self is something is there here that nobody can doubt. So for people who are interested in spirituality and yet they find it very difficult to take up, they find it unconvincing to take the path of dualistic, theistic religions, it's much better to investigate the self. That's why Vedanta appeals to such people. Don't ask about God, ask about yourself. Who am I? Am I the body? Am I the mind? Am I a combination of body and mind? Or am I something more which Vedanta speaks about? And at every step, there's no question of any extra belief. You verify it by understanding and by noting it. You see, even in yoga, which Vivekananda talks about, there can be a doubt. Somebody actually asked Vivekananda in India, you are saying by the practice of these techniques, I can actually experience the spiritual realities. Good. But the catch is, these techniques are difficult and it will take me 30 years of hard effort. There's an entry barrier there. How do I know right now that what you're talking about is real? Right? Even experience of God is a long-term project. Until that time, you have to proceed on some kind of course, it does not take much faith, because the more you practice yoga, the more you see, to that extent you see it's correct, it's right. You don't have to wait till the very end when suddenly God pops into existence in front of you and then you say, okay, it was all right. No, till that point, Swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little practice of this saves one from great fear. So that process is self-verifying. But Vedanta goes a step further. It takes for its datum your own existence, which is beyond any doubt. So that's my answer. For such minds, and I am very much in sympathy with such minds, so I feel that the path of self-enquiry. I have said this earlier, let me repeat it. It's a very interesting idea. Vedanta basically says that thou art. You are Brahman. That thou art. That means in Vedanta, that means God actually. Saguna Brahman. Thou means the individual. These two kinds of consciousness, individualized consciousness and cosmic consciousness. Remember, individualized consciousness, we feel ourselves. It's not a matter of any kind of belief. We experience ourselves all the time. That cosmic consciousness which one calls God is a matter of faith. But these two are essentially the same consciousness. That is the teaching of Vedanta. Correct? Now, look how it's interesting. All the religions of the world and all kinds of religious aspiration, spiritual aspiration, are either one of these two types. I have seen young people coming to become monks in the order. I ask them, what do you want? What are you looking for? They cleanly divide into two groups. Some of them say, I'm searching for God. Many of them, they say, I'm searching for God. What's the truth, man? Give me the truth, they'll say in this country. The truth about this entire world. The other group says, God is nice and good. Good luck to him. But I am interested in, who am I? What's the purpose of my life? What is the meaning of this life? And who am I really? Searching for the reality of the self. Searching for the existence of God. Two realities. Two kinds of approach in spiritual life. Now look at the religions of the world. Some of the religions are that oriented, and some approaches are thou oriented. That thou art, tat tvamasi. Some are tat oriented, some are tvam oriented. That oriented, thou oriented. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and many forms of Hinduism. When you worship Vishnu, or you mentioned the Devi, worship the Divine Mother, many forms of Hinduism, you worship Shiva, they're all God-oriented, that-oriented, oriented around Saguna Brahman, Ishvara. And there is another kind of religion, Buddhism, for example. Jainism, or in Hinduism, the Sankhya Yoga philosophies. You thought I was going to say Advaita Vedanta, but no.
Yeah,
No. Advaita is something else again. Sankhya, Yoga, Buddhism, Jainism, they're very different from each other, but all of them are concerned with self-realization. Buddhism is not very concerned with God. There are entire Buddhist communities, philosophies which actually actively deny the existence of God. Sankhya does not talk about God. Yoga speaks of God, but if you investigate the nature of God, yoga, I mean Patanjali Yoga. If you investigate the nature of God spoken about by Patanjali Yoga, you will see it's not the God of religion. It is as we said, the primal guru, the one who, the ever-free soul who helps us on the path of realization, but not the creator of the world, not the rewarder or punisher, nothing like that. So there is an entire type of religion which is oriented towards self-inquiry. And the two religions are different, suited to different minds. This kind of religion, the God kind of religion, deals with, you'll see it's mostly centered around temples and houses of worship and churches. It's centered around worship and prayer and devotion and bhakti and festivals and food, lots of delicious food. And so many things, and songs, and love. These are traditions of bhakti, traditionally, most of them. And they have other sides also, but not, mostly it is this kind. The other kind, if you see Buddhism, Jainism, Sankhya, Yoga, they are very introspective religions. They are centered around meditation, many of them. Again, I'm saying these things have developed for thousands of years, so they have all aspects of both sides. They're very complex systems. But traditionally, if you see the stream, especially the original starting, it is very inward looking. It is meditative. It is ascetic. It's often very monastic, these traditions. And they are more spiritually inclined, philosophical, meditative. And each of these systems, these two approaches, they have their advantages and disadvantages. Think about it. The disadvantage of the God-oriented approach is you have to start with belief in God, your son's problem, and problem of many, many people throughout the world. You have to start with belief. If you are seriously interested in religion, it becomes a big hurdle. Many people are conventionally interested. They go to a temple or a church on Sundays or on do pujas. That God is a peripheral part of their lives, so they are not really asking the question. But if you really ask the question, then it becomes a serious problem. Does God exist? How do I know? I could be fooling myself. You say Ramakrishna saw God. He could be fooling himself. Who knows? How do I know God exists or not? A doubt. Because it's based on faith. We don't see God. At least not for a very long time. Whereas the self-inquiry methods, this side has the big advantage. It's not based on faith in that sense. Because the self exists. Nobody doubts it. That I am there, nobody doubts it. Nature of the self is open to doubt. I know there should be questions in your minds. Didn't the Buddha doubt the existence of the self? The Buddha doubted the existence of a permanent, immortal Atman. But that you feel I am, that nobody doubts, because everybody feels it. How can you doubt something that you feel all the time? Yeah. So, they have the advantage of, the self is not a matter of faith. It's a matter of experience. Everybody experiences the self. But what is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that the self, it's no use to me saying that I exist. That's my problem, that I exist. I have all these problems in my life. My existence is surrounded by problems. It's a limited existence. It's a miserable existence. It's existence which is threatened by death, which is threatened by disease and dishonor and frustration and failure. It's something that's troubled by desire and ambition. All of this. It's a troubled existence. That's the problem. And the advantage in the other side is, this problem is not there on that side. God, if God exists, he, she, it, if it exists, has no problems. Omniscient, all-powerful, all-pervading, all-knowing, all-loving, all-good. What problem does God have? God has no problems if he exists. My existence is not in doubt, but I have a lot of problems. Now, Here's the climax. I'm coming to Advaita, non-dual Vedanta. Bring the two together. You know what's the genius of Advaita Vedanta? It brings the two traditions together, the two streams together, leaving out the problems of both, combining the advantage of other. How does it combine the advantage of both of them? See, the certainty of your own existence is combined with the infinitude of God. The doubt about the existence of God is done away with, because what you speak about, what God you speak about in Vedanta is your own self. Your own self properly understood is Brahman. Brahman in Vedanta is nothing but you. And you, immediately you have to say, you are not the body and mind individual person. You are nothing but Brahman. The infinitude of Brahman removes the finitude of the self. The problems of the self are removed because you realize yourself as infinite. The certainty about your own existence removes the doubt about the existence of God. Somebody in Uttarakhand in Himalayas asked a teacher, non-dual Vedanta teacher, in Hindi, ईश्वर के अस्तित्व में अकाट्य प्रमाण दीजिए. Give me an irrefutable proof of the existence of God. Irrefutable proof. Nobody should be able to deny that. Immediate was the answer. आपका अपना अस्तित्व, your own existence. Because in Vedanta, your existence and God's existence are one and the same. What is the problem is, Vedanta says your finitude, that you limit yourself to one body and mind, that has to be done away with. That is a mistake, and Vedanta seeks to correct that mistake. That's the purpose of Vedanta. That's the beauty of Vedanta. Your certainty that I exist, God's infinitude, combine it, I am infinite. That is the meaning of Aham Brahmasmi. That is the meaning of that thou art. Thou, the indubitable certain existence called thou, art that infinite existence. I see how the two religious traditions, when they interact with each other. I remember one interfaith conference which I attended. And there were people from all religious traditions. Sikhs, it was organized by the Sikhs in India. There were Hindus and Sikhs and Christians. There was even a rabbi from New York. And there were Buddhists. There were a group of monks, the Llamas sent by the Dalai Lama. Now, I saw something interesting. When all the people, they're standing up and saying good things about each other. It's the same God that we worship. God is all loving. We should not fight in the name of God. And I could see the Lama sitting in the back and smiling. From their point of view, they're too polite and nice to say otherwise. From their point of view, you are a superstitious lot. What God? What God? You have no shred of evidence of that such a God. You are a superstitious lot. They're sitting and smiling. I'm saying it out aloud. They will never say such a thing. They're non-violent and very nice and very sweet. And if you ask a Christian theologian or a Vaishnava Pandit about what they think about the Buddhists, they will think that they are a selfish lot. Self-centered. There's a term, navel-gazing. No devotion to God. A Swami, who is a very devoted person of our order, no less, he said, in a great annoyance, it seems to be a half a religion, Buddhism. We have everything there except God. How is it possible to have a religion without God? Yet from Advaita point of view, it makes perfect sense. Both. What you seek in Buddhism and find, what you seek in traditional religion, in theistic religion, are one and the same thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to wait till he was finished. A couple of thoughts here. I do think the self-inquiry is actually a really good one. The problem is, how do you ask that question? How do you start off people with that? You say, okay, who are you? I'm thinking along the lines of the Western mind, I think, for the most part. They're going to say, I'm the mind. And I was just thinking, it's like, what happens if you ask them, it's like, are you the brain or the mind? It's like, would some say, oh, they're both one and the same, or some may say, it's like, maybe they are different. But yeah, that's how it start off with. But I don't know how else to lead with that, though. Again, and this is something that, and maybe even some people it's like, well, I'm the mind. Who cares? They don't really care to look internally more because there's so much external problems that, it's a waste of time. It's like, well, who cares if I find who I am? It's not going to fix the external problems that I have. But, I think that's what's kind of lacking, honestly. Even if you don't go so deep into Advaita Vedanta or say like Buddhism and such, but to end suffering or not to get so frustrated with things in life, I think will be so much more helpful. Kind of like what Dandapani talks about. He talks about focus a lot. And if you're able to separate yourself from your emotions and able to see the fact that what Sadhguru says, that you have control over your body, you have no control over everyone else, you hopefully, like how I've become for the most part, is that if people don't listen to me, or if they don't follow what I say, or if I ask them to do something they don't do it, I don't really get mad or frustrated. It's just like, well, they don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it. I just accept things as they are. I know I don't have control over people. I may make requests, and whether to do it or not, it's a different story. I have complete control over myself, so I'm generally self-sufficient, so I try to do things on my own because I know that if I want to get it done, I have to do it myself. That doesn't mean you can't ask help. It's very nice if people help. And to go with the guy there, I think he's doing it kind of wrong. He's trying to force his belief on his child, which I don't think is the right thing to do. You can say, it's like, hey, this is what I believe. And he goes, no, I believe in science. It's like, okay, that's fine. And that's it. Trouble over with. You don't force your belief in anyone else. And if your son wants to hear more about it, then talk to him about it. It's like, well, I think that's a bit ridiculous. I believe in science more. It's like, okay, that's fine. So what else do you want to talk about? And that's what it sounded like he's trying to say. It sounds like, he's saying, no, the Devi gave them the proofs. And his son saying, no, it's not. And he's saying he's trying to convince his son, which is, I think it's the wrong approach for it. You're going to be struggling, and I don't think you should be struggling to convince people of things. But I think inward, what Swami talked about, looking inwards, is a good thing for him, probably. Because, again, that's something that's severely lacking in the United States. Not many people look inwards and to understand the fact that, they have control over themselves. They don't have control over anyone else. And if they're able to at least separate themselves from their emotions and thoughts, that they'll be less frustrated and more focused in life. Well, don't get me wrong, I can separate my emotion and my thoughts for the most part. I'm still not focused. I guess that's just me.
A question from the internet audience?
This is an email from Amrita, who's actually voicing a question that's come from many people. She says, I find that Advaita Vedanta says that we are God himself, but there is one question in my mind, and that is, if I am God, then to whom do I pray? And why do I pray when I am all in all?
All right. Look at the language of this question. If I am God in Advaita Vedanta, that thou art. And I can't escape, I just said it at great length. So if that's true, then whom do I pray to? Look at the language. I pray. Which means I remain as I am, an individual being who
Separate.
needs the grace of God. I'm devoted to God. I love the Lord my God. And somehow I am also God, Advaita told me. So now you're putting me in trouble. How can I pray to God?
You don't.
When Advaita says that you are God, you are one with God, Tattvamasi Aham Brahmasmi, what they mean is two things. First of all, when they say that you are God, it means you are not the individual person you think yourself to be. When Shankaracharya sings, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham, I am pure consciousness, pure bliss of the nature of Shiva. What did he sing in the first three lines? Mano buddhya hankara chittani naham, nacha shrotra jibhe, nacha ghrana netre, nacha vyoma bhumir, na tejo na vayu. I am not the mind. I am not the intellect. I am not the memory. I am not the ego. I am not the ego. Look at the contradiction, apparently. Ego means what? I. And what is he saying? I, the ego. Saying, I am not the ego. That means the real I is not the ego. I am not the senses. I am not the body and the mind made of the five elements. sky and earth and fire and water. No. Then only have I any right to say, I am pure consciousness, pure bliss of the nature of Shiva. I cannot be Swami Sarvapriyananda sitting in this chair and claim to be God. That's megalomania. That's craziness. Vedanta never says that. Vedanta says, realize yourself as you truly are, you will find yourself that you are one with God. Even then, you will not be God. When we study Vedanta, we see, I'll just put it in one or two sentences, I can't explain the whole thing here. The same existence, consciousness, bliss associated with Maya is called Saguna Brahman or God of religion. The same existence, consciousness, bliss limited by an individual avidya, a part of Maya, one ajnana, avidya, ignorance, is called individual, you are I. They are never the same. According to Advaita Vedanta, God is Saguna Brahman, Brahman, Satchidananda plus Maya. Brahman plus Maya. Satchidananda plus Maya. That is Saguna Brahman, God. And the individual, Jiva, is the same Brahman but limited by Ajnana, by a tiny portion of Maya. So the end result, Jiva, is never equal to Ishvara. Shankaracharya himself clearly says, the wave belongs to the ocean. The ocean never belongs to the wave. We are never saying that the Jiva is Ishvara. The Jiva, the individual being, human being, is God. No, no, no. The reality of Jiva and the reality of Ishvara are one and the same. At that point, neither Ishvara is Ishvara nor Jiva is Jiva. It is one pure consciousness. That's what Advaita Vedanta is saying. At that point, there is nobody to pray and nobody to pray to. At that point, who will pray for what? Now, knowing that, can I go on praying? Of course. The moment you feel, I am this individual being, though in reality I be pure consciousness, of course I can pray to God. When I'm standing in the body and mind, and I act as the body and mind, and I do act as the body and mind all the time, except when I'm reading Vedanta. Even then you are the body and mind because you are reading Vedanta. So why can I not pray to God? If I can eat, if I can walk, if I can talk, if I can ask a question, if I can answer a question, I can do everything in life and not pray to God. Why not? Hanuman, when he was asked by Ramachandra, what do you think of me? Hanuman said, as a body, I am Hanuman, thy servant. As the conscious being inside this body, the Jiva, I am part of thee. You are the whole, I am the part. But as pure consciousness, the Atman, you and I are the same thing. Which one is true? All of them are true. The ultimate truth is you and I are the same thing. But in this position, as a body and mind, I can perfectly act, thou art the Lord, I am thy servant. Between me and thee exists a bond of love. Kabir's song, translated by Tagore, so beautiful. From the beginning of time till the end of time, a love exists between us. How could such love ever be severed? How could such a bond ever be severed? So beautiful. Like the chakor, which looks up at the moon. There's a traditional Indian story about the night bird chakor, Chandar chakor they say, which falls in love with the moon. Of course, it's a little bird. And it looks at the moon. Of course, it can never reach the moon. But it pines away from the moon for all its life, looks up at the moon. I am like that. And I'm perfectly all right because ultimately I'm one with you. So I know I'm safe. But till that, as an individual being, I can love the cosmic. I can love my beloved. Why not? There is that great, beautiful saying. Before enlightenment, dualism leads to confusion, to delusion, being trapped in samsara. After enlightenment, the enlightened person imagines a duality, a difference between himself and the Lord for the sake of love. Bodhat prak dvaitam mohaya. Before enlightenment, dualism leads to delusion. I get trapped in samsara. Friend, enemy, good, bad, things to be done, regrets, ambitions. Dualism. After enlightenment, what happens to dualism? A dualism is now imagined. Really, there is no dualism. It's an appearance now, like snake in the rope. It's imagined. Why? Because of joy. Bhakti artam kalpitam dvaitam. I imagine a dualism because it appears to be. I don't have to work hard at it. It appears. The dualism continues to appear, even for an enlightened person. And why do I do that? Bhakti, for love. And then what? Advaitadapi sundaram. It is more beautiful than non-dualism.
It's weird.
One great non-dualistic teacher giving a talk about the Bhagavatam, which is an excellent dualistic text, or not dualistic text, I will say it's an excellent text of bhakti. Now one bhakti tradition teacher, he grumbled. He said, yes, those non-dualists, they have such a boring time of it. Naturally, they are going to come into our territory and talk about our Krishna and our Bhagavatam. What are they going to do all day long? Talk about Maya and Brahman and how the world is an appearance? Just boring. So they are going to end up talking about love anyway. All right.
Yeah, I was wondering. It's like why is dualism more beautiful than non-dualism? That's really weird. But then again, I'm assuming it's dualism in the terms of enlightenment, though. However, as opposed to dualism, like you was talking about earlier, about enemy, friend, sorrow, suffering, and all that. That's why I said that's weird. Because when you were non-dual, then, well, hopefully you're enlightened at that point. I'm guessing, and with her question, is the fact that, you know, the fact is stated to her, but she has not experienced it. That's the reason why she asked that question. When you're, I'm assuming when you're enlightened, you realize that you're just praying to yourself, or you don't have to pray anymore because you realize the reality. And so, you know, understanding the reality and realizing it's definitely two different things. And this is how I understand my progress in this, is the fact that the first thing you must do is understand it. Then you can, in my opinion, this perhaps that might be for me, that then I can experience it. Because if I don't understand it, I don't think I'll be able to experience it, or I won't understand my experience. Like, I experienced something, but I have no idea what it is. I guess I wonder if there's a good example for that. There's probably are, and I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Can you give the microphone to him?
Swami, I've heard you say, and I've read that the universe appears as bubbles in my consciousness.
Yes.
And given that, sometimes I find when I'm in class, I think to myself, well, here I am, surrounded by myself, and there's me, talking to me, teaching me about myself.
Yes.
Given that, what is knowledge?
Knowledge is that which removes an ignorance in a particular mind. The ignorance has there is an appearance of duality here, right? Even after knowledge, the appearance of duality will not go away. But the appearance of duality will be seen as an appearance of duality. The underlying unity will be understood clearly, without any doubt. So you and I and all of us are one. And it's not crazy to talk about it like that, because I know I have attended classes in the Himalayas where the Swami starts the class by sitting, Mere Atma Swarup Sab, O all ye who are my very self. You have come in this way. Even mundane things. In the Himalayas, there are what is called Bhandara. Bhandara is a big occasion for monks, where monks are invited to feasts. Rich people give money, and a nice meal is cooked, and you invite monks. Now it depends. You can't invite all monks because there isn't enough food. So some of these bhandaras are limited number. You have to have RSVP, or what do you call it? Yes. And they will go around. There is such and such a feast and such ashram on such and such date. Now, how many people from your ashram will go? How many monks will go? So instead of saying monks, they use very interesting language. Kitne murti? How many forms are going? The reality is one. How many forms are going to go? How many murtis are formed? How many forms shall you be? There's a funny story about Swami Brahmananda. I mentioned Swami Brahmananda had gone to Kashi, the hospital, with Holy Mother and that. So everybody would gather around him and meditate, and he would talk to them. It was such an exalted atmosphere. Nobody wanted to go anywhere. And so an invitation came, as it does, for a bhandara, for a feast in some other ashram. And nobody wanted to go. And the head of the ashram felt very discomfited, because if he doesn't make a good showing, he will lose face in the sadhu samaj, in the committee of monks. Nobody came from your ashram. What? We don't want to come? You don't like us, or what? So he went to Swami Brahmananda and said, Swami, everybody comes to you early in the morning, and tomorrow we have an invitation to a feast and nobody wants to go. They all want to sit in front of you. What do I do? And Swami Brahmananda said, don't worry. The next day they all came. All the monks, they bowed down to him. And he said, stand in a queue. They all stood in a queue with hands folded. Now he said, about turn. And they turned around. And now off with you, march off to the feast. And they all marched up to the feast. So they had a big turnout. It's an imagined duality. And the knowledge removes ignorance there. Before this imagination, that it's an imagined duality, it's a very real duality. You see the duality and it's very real. The non-duality seems to be theoretical. After the Advaitic teaching comes, it removes the ignorance in our mind, and then the appearance which continues is recognized as an appearance, not anymore as a real duality. And that removes the sorrow. You see, the sorrow comes from the reality, not from the appearance. The greatest of tragedies, the most evil of people, the most horrible things are acceptable where? Even enjoyable. Where?
Duality.
In fiction, in theater, in a movie, in Hollywood. Correct. Even the worst of things, you will enjoy it and you will give it an Oscar award. For a fraction of something, a person would be locked up if he actually tried to do it in the world. Would be hauled up before the International Court of Justice in The Hague or something. But in a movie, you give it Oscars. Why? Because the sting is taken out when it becomes art, it becomes enjoyable. Even horrible things, let alone enjoyable things. For an enlightened person, only from his point of view, that person's point of view, nothing is really horrible anymore. That does not mean he'll be cold and cruel and calculating when it comes to others. When others are suffering, he'll be all help, all comfort, all sympathy. From his own point of view, it's a play. That's why I say, if you claim enlightenment, you have no right to complain anymore.
I will say that's the thing that's kind of difficult to, and that's something that perhaps maybe I don't know how to say, I don't like, because this is the reason why I like, whenever Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna, they said that this world is real and it's not a play. At least, again, I've heard that said. I don't know if they meant it or not. I've only heard that said one time. And this is the reason why I want to push that, as opposed to saying that this world is an illusion, this world is fake, this world is, I don't know, a play, like Swami here is talking about. I fear that it gives people who have ill intent to do bad things in the world. Again, obviously, if they continue to follow this path and they come to realization and are genuinely, genuinely, I don't know, it's not genuinely good, but it's just genuinely trying to follow this path, they would not do harm. But the problem is that when they hear this first, perhaps, that they just say, well, you know, that's very nice, I could just say that. And kind of like there's people out there who say, you know, God made me do it. You know, they talk about like their religion God made me do it. Their religion God says I need to do this. And that's kind of the problem I have with this. The fact, oh, this is all fake. Well, then there's no reason to be good, because good is fake, bad is fake. And this is something perhaps I probably would not push. Just because, again, I like to follow the path that, even though, you know, what is it? I think of the absolute reality a little bit differently, I think, than Advaita Vedanta. But also, I like to think that this world is real. Well, in terms of a lot of people's minds, this world is real. Obviously, the objective reality. Those who follow Advaita Vedanta or these other teachings, perhaps this world is fake. But I'd probably push more along the lines of this world is real. At least, and perhaps the people who don't have this way of thinking will at least lessen their chance of just saying, doing bad things. I'm not saying that everyone does it, but there's that potentiality there. Just because with religion, they say God told me to do this, even though I'm sure a lot of the religious people say God's saying don't do bad things, but this person does it because he believes or they think they heard God tell him to do that, or that they need to do that for God or whatever, to cause bad things because they think their God believes in this or whatever. And that, in the same sense with this, if they just hear this part and they don't follow all the way through, and they think that this world's fake, and they get kind of this sense that, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like they just really, really, really focus on this world is fake, and they can potentially get perhaps not enlightenment, but bliss in some sense that way, because then they're suffering. Oh, this is all fake, and they genuinely could believe that suffering and all this is all fake, and they can do whatever they want, which could be potentially harmful. But because it's fake, it's not really a big deal. I hope that came out right. It was very difficult to explain this.
If you claim enlightenment, you have no right to complain anymore. One person came to Belur Mutt, and he was Australian. So he had a strong Australian accent. The Swami who was sitting in the inquiry, the Swami is especially short Swami, and this is especially big Australian. Australians are big, and this is especially big Australian. So this gentleman had to kneel down, and the Swami was sitting in the chair so that they could be on the same level. Even then, the Swami couldn't understand what he was saying. He called me and said, "Look, you know English quite well. You talk to this person. What is he saying?" And it turned out that the gentleman was saying that he had visions of Christ, of Krishna, of Ramakrishna, and they're all entered into his body. I said, "Fine, that's wonderful. I mean, it's beyond my league. The only person who can help you is there." I pointed to the Ramakrishna temple. He's sitting there. He can help you. I mean, it's way beyond my league. But what's your problem? Let me ask you. That threw him. Problem? Well, he looked unhappy. Well, actually, I feel it's all coming to an end and I don't want to die. Oh, really? You don't want to, you have experienced Christ consciousness and Krishna consciousness and Ramakrishna consciousness. You know that you are the infinite being and everything. And this particular body, you're afraid it'll die. That's your real big problem. And then he looked confused and he thought, maybe I gave him matter for thought, and he went away. Yeah. Yes. One last question from the internet. We are almost out of time. Oh, you have a question? Okay. Vishnuda has a question, and then we'll come to the internet question. Yes. Khalu Bhagyavanti, yes.
Is this be regarded as spiritual retreat?
All right. The question by one of our senior most members is, he's quoting from Shankaracharya's Kaupina Panchakam. The traditional monks have, they go around wearing only a loincloth, nothing else. And that too, not all monks. There are some in the high Himalayas who discard that piece of luxury also. So they go around stark naked. Now, Kaupina Vanta means the wearer of the loincloth, which means a monk. The monk is fortunate. That's the refrain of the whole hymn, of the stotra. Kaupina Vanta Khalu Bhagyavanta. The truly fortunate is the wearer of the loincloth. And it ends on that note, Brahmaksharam Pavanam Uchcharanto Brahmam Aham Asmi iti Vibhavavayanta. Dikshu Paribhramanta, he says. Constantly contemplating the Vedantic truth that I am Brahman. As long as the body lives, wandering over this wide earth, sleeping wherever he finds shelter. Swami Vivekananda said, food, whatever chance may bring, good or bad, can never taint the self, which knows itself. It's a wonderful life. Those who have tried it, it's a kind of freedom one can only You cannot imagine it. You are completely devoted in spiritual life, that your whole identity is, I am Brahman. And the body is given up to call it to God, to karma, what chance will bring. I myself tried a little bit of that. Tremendous freedom. I wandered from village to village in the Himalayas, begged for my food, slept under a tree, meditated on a mountain peak with the shining peaks, the real giants surrounding me, 20,000 feet, 25,000 feet towering above. I was much lower there, about 9,000, 10,000 feet. And sitting on a huge rock and meditating and seeing this extraordinary vista laid out in front of me, and not a care in the world. At least some kind of understanding that I am Brahman. The wearer of the loincloth is truly fortunate, Shankaracharya says. We think, who is fortunate? The rich person who has made a killing on Wall Street, made a lot of money on Wall Street, or has won the lottery, or who is fortunate in her relationships, has property, and very famous, made it in Hollywood. That person is fortunate. Not at all. Not in the least. Is a person who does not have any of this and does not want any of this. Who is perfectly satisfied, either as a devotee with God alone, my Krishna, mere to Giridhara Gopala, or as the self within, pure existence, consciousness, bliss. That person is truly happy. That's the real, as he asked, is that a spiritual retreat? Yes, that's the real spiritual retreat, a taste of which we are trying to have here today. Please let me know when the food is ready, and we will take a question from the internet audience here.
I'll say real quick, I don't disagree with them in terms of that. I would say, whether you hit the lottery, whether you're rich or whatever, I think the ultimate goal is the fact that when you're content, that is it, regardless of whether you're poor or rich. I would say, obviously, I think what he talks about, the fortunate monk with the loincloth, because, and the fact that that monk wants nothing, that very much so is, I wouldn't say necessarily enlightenment, but fortunate, because I guess the problems with the Western world, I keep saying Western world, I think it's a developed world thing. It's the fact of the want, always the want, that want is never ending, and you're always, in some sense, suffering for it. And that's the reason why I interpreted it that's the reason why the monk is the one that's better off. If you want nothing, then you don't suffer any of it at all, because there's nothing that you want. That craving, that need, that want. Let me phrase it that way. That want is not there. And this is the reason why I focus on contentment, is because it's, it's, I guess it's in some sense the same. It's not necessarily not wanting anything, but if you want something, it's fine, and if you don't get it, it's fine. Content is, I guess, a kind of a happy medium in my mind that I want to try to find a way to teach. Well, not teach, but hope to pursue people, to convince people to be content with their life. I don't know how to do it though, so I'd be a bad teacher for that. But that's something that I want to push, and that's something that I've come to be for the most part. I'm not perfect at it. For the most part, I am content. I don't know. I'm sure there are some things that I'm not content with in life. Well, I know there is things that I'm not content with in life, but I'm hovering between not content and content with that thing. So that's the reason why I'm not saying, I'm definitely not going to say I'm perfect. Like, oh, I'm perfectly content. I'm mostly content.
You have a question? Yes.
This is from Saurav. Swami Vivekananda says that this truth is first to be listened to, then to be thought about. Lastly, this is to be meditated upon. But when I sit to think and meditate upon this truth, that I am God, I am unable to get hold of sufficient material to think upon. For example, do I think of a stage where everything crumbles in the dust, but only I will stand alone? I can't realize it. I think when everything will crumble, so will I. Please guide on how the thought process should be.
Did you listen to the question? If I have to meditate, study it, Shravana, hear it, think about it, reason upon it, Manana, and then meditate upon what you have studied and reasoned upon, Nididhyasana. But he says, suppose I sit and meditate, I am God. First of all, I don't get enough material to meditate upon. And second, if I think everything is not there and I am God, even then I feel I am not there also. I also crumble away there. So how do I meditate? Much more important is the study and the thinking. Why I do not find material for meditation is because I have not given sufficient stress there. The whole of Vedanta, all these Upanishads, the commentaries of Shankaracharya, all these hymns, Kaupina Panchakam he just quoted, all these texts, Aparokshanubhuti, Drigdrishya Viveka, this is material. How much material do you want? The 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, the 555 sutras of the Brahma Sutra, the vast, it's an ocean of material. And all of it tells you the same truth. Right. All of it tells you the same truth, that you are Brahman. It's an enormous amount of material to meditate upon. That's one point. Swami Turiyanandaji used to say, somebody asked, how did you spend your time in the Himalayas? He lived in a little cottage by the side of the Ganges, cottage built of twigs and leaves and all. He said, part job, dhyan part. Part means study. Japa means repeating the mantra. Dhyana means meditation. I studied the Vedanta, I repeated the mantra, I meditated, then when meditation is not deep, you don't like it, repeat the mantra. When you get tired of the mantra, study the Vedanta. When the mind becomes deep and concentrated, go back to the mantra. Deeper and more concentrated in deep meditation. Lose your concentration, come back to studying and the mantra. And what do? He says the cycle continued day and night. Day and night the cycle continued. That's matter for meditation. He says, how did I? Oh, okay, there's a story. Swami Prabhavanandaji, who established the Hollywood Center in Hollywood 1930. When he was in Benares, we keep going back to Benares today. When he was in Benares, Swami Turiyanandaji was in Benares at that time. Hari Maharaj, great Vedantin. And so Prabhavanandaji thought, I should learn Gita from Turiyanandaji himself. What a fortune. So he went to Turiyanandaji himself and he said, please teach me the Gita. And Turiyanandaji said, okay, get the Gita tomorrow, take a bath, come early in the morning, tomorrow I will start the lesson. With great expectation with the Gita, he arrived, presented himself before Swami Turiyananda and said, please teach me the Gita. And Swami Turiyananda said, take up one verse, memorize it, meditate upon it, try to put it into practice in your life, then go on to the next verse. This is my first and last lesson in Gita to you. Because he found Prabhavanandaji, he was Abani at that time, Abani Maharaj, to be of that caliber, who would actually do it, who would do this. Matter for meditation. This is matter for meditation. Take up texts and think deeply about it. All of them are telling you that you are Brahman. Now the second thing is, why is it difficult? If I think that, he said, if I think the world is crumbling away, I too tend to crumble away there. You know why? The problem is, what are you thinking of yourself as? You're thinking of yourself as body and mind. As this person who is trying to meditate here. I know theoretically I'm Brahman. Now I am this body and mind. Somehow I'll become Brahman when I realize that. No, it will not work that way. When the world crumbles, body and mind also goes with it. Correct. And what is left? Here, follow this carefully. In whose vision, in whose drishti, in whose awareness, in what awareness did the world, body and mind crumble away into nothingness? Look at your own language. Did you not say, I see when the world crumbles away, even I crumble away into nothingness. If you crumble away into nothingness, who is that which notes that you are crumbling away into nothingness? Meditate on that. Stay with that. On that beautiful, very high note, we'll bring it to a conclusion. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Khali pete dharma hai na? No religion on an empty stomach, no spiritual retreat also on an empty stomach. So I am informed that the food is ready. We'll conclude it at this point. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Please come. Come forward. All right, so that's it.
You know, oh gosh, I gotta end this. I can't even really talk very much. Anyways, I gotta end this video right here. Wish I could talk a little bit, but I run the risk of burning up my computer of processing this hour-long video. And plus, I think I've said enough already anyways. So that's my reaction to Ask Swami with Swami Server RPN on April 23rd, 2017. That seems like a long time ago. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.